Videos like these are made possible by viewers like you, who support the channel through Patreon, channel memberships, and stream donations. And don't forget to check out the Bad Weapon Rehabilitation servers at www.badweaponrehab.tf. Check the links in the description for more information, and let's get into the video. Let me ask you something. What is the design philosophy of each sniper primary? Well, as a baseline, you have long-distance single-target elimination, but what does each sniper primary do in order to achieve or assist that goal, or to make itself stand out from the rest of the crowd? Well, for the Bizarre Bargain, you have a sort of snowballing effect where good snipers are rewarded for hitting headshots with a faster charge. For the Heatmaker, you have a similar effect, except actually balanced. For the Sydney Sleeper, you sacrifice damage for a supportive role that helps your teammates get kills more so than yourself, ideally. For the Huntsman, you trade reliable hit scan for a projectile that gives you more mobility while in combat and a wide field of view. For the Classic, you have memes. And when it comes to the Machina, the design philosophy seems to be never unscope. Always be hard scoping. Don't you fucking move, buddy. Just keep looking down that scope. When I first started getting into TF2, I heard about this cool futuristic sniper rifle that could penetrate opponents and did extra damage. And I thought to myself, holy shit, this sounds like the coolest gun in the game. And when I finally got my hands on it, it let me the fuck down. I mean, not in terms of power or anything. It's still really similar to the stock sniper rifle, but that's part of my problem with it. It's the same problem that encapsulates all too many of the rifle unlocks. It's too similar to stock, and doesn't change all that much. Stats-wise, the Machina functions identically to the other conventional sniper rifles. Charges at the same rate, fires hit scan, 150 damage quickscopes. However, on fully charged shots, that's when the actual changes start coming in. You do 15% more damage, and your shots will penetrate players. This comes at the cost of not being able to no-scope, and when you do shoot, you'll fire a team-colored tracer round that immediately gives away your position. Hardly a stealthy gun despite the stealth game it comes from, and despite its stealthy black yet still somewhat ostentatious design. But hey, that part's on Human Revolution, the game's a bit fucking ostentatious. The tracer round is interesting. Many people would like to see this stat applied to Sniper universally, or at least some version of it. Hell, even on the Rebalance server, we gave all of the rifles besides the Machina the classic tracer rounds. We settled on those ones because they're less obstructive while still being at least somewhat noticeable. Anyways, I don't have much issue with this as a general downside, since I think it's a unique one that encourages snipers to move around and reposition in order to make themselves less vulnerable, and help get picks on enemies who would otherwise avoid a sightline knowing for certain that a sniper is now watching it. But my problem with this stat is that it meshes extremely poorly with the gun's upsides, which encourage you to stay in one place for extended periods of time. Now, having a downside directly contradict the upsides isn't necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it can keep certain powerful aspects of a weapon in check. But when it comes to the Machina, I find these upsides to be pretty middling. The penetrating players aspect is what initially drew me to the weapon, and for good reason. It's pretty cool in concept. But even in 12v12 pubs, unless it's a big group of people in one spot, or the map is incredibly choke heavy like Dust Bowl or older payload maps especially, it's incredibly situational. Unless you have an extremely solid hold on your sniping position, it's not going to be an easy feat to get fully charged and hold it while waiting for two people to pass your crosshairs so you can get a double kill. That's the real bitch of it. The fact that you have to wait for a fully charged shot every time you want to get a collateral. That makes this function so situational unless you're in a position of extreme comfort while staying scoped in for extended periods of time. Yeah, sorry, I play on LA servers. I'm guaranteed at least 2 10,000-hour kunai spies on every team I play against. Hard scoping is a luxury, not a right.
1/3 of a million.
I mean, don't get me wrong, when the stars align, it's one of the most satisfying feelings in the entire game. It's no wonder they tied a server-wide sound cue to it. That's like double dog tier in terms of sound effects. But I almost think it's too infrequent. I'd be happier with less base damage and a faster charge if it meant I could do this more often. But instead, we got the worst of both worlds because god, I hate this next stat the most. The extra damage upon fully charged headshots also does basically nothing for you, as no class has the extra health to tank a 512 damage headshot. This feature comes in handy in exactly 3 situations in regards to headshots. If you're shooting a fully overhealed heavy who's revved up using the Brass Beast or Natasha, if you're headshotting a full health heavy, but not an overhealed one, who's currently holding out the Fists of Steel, or if you're shooting a fully overhealed heavy who's being pocketed by a vaccinator medic using bullet resistance who isn't currently using one of his vaccinator charges, which yes he fucking will be because those charges are basically free. So both of the weapon's extremely situational upsides only come into play when you're fully charged, and you're so vulnerable to spam and snipers and spies and flankers while you're scoped in for long periods of time that the upsides of this weapon just don't feel like they come into play that often, with one notorious exception. That extra damage doesn't just apply to headshots, and the Machina does 173 damage upon body shotting.
Now, this isn't enough to kill anything from full health that you couldn't before, except for a Pain Trainer Claymore Demo Man or a Vaccinator Medic with a passive bullet resistance.
But a Pyro or Demo on 2 health is basically dead to chip damage anyway, and a Soldier on 27 health is going to have a hard time rocket jumping away from a follow-up shot even if he has the gunboats. The important thing is that this encourages snipers using the Machina to go for body shots even more than the Sydney Sleeper ever did, even when it got no bonus for headshotting. Because honestly, unless your life is on the line, why bother going for headshots at all? You don't get rewarded any more than stock does, except in very specific situations, and if you're fully charged, why not try for that extra damage when it might actually do something for you? It seems weirdly paradoxical. Like, hey, why not just go for headshots, dumbass? You'll actually instantly kill people instead of just doing a bit more damage than a stock body shot would. But that's kind of the thing. At the point where you're just hitting headshots like a normal sniper should be, why not just switch off to stock, or the Bizarre Bargain, or the Heatmaker?
Damn, this circular logic!
If you're playing sniper normally by going for headshots, you're basically gimping yourself out of the element of surprise and the utility of no-scopes, at no extra value to you. Oh, and don't get me wrong, because people seem to think that the lack of no-scopes is a nothing downside. Trust me, it isn't.
I can't no-scope!
Being able to do some damage while maintaining what limited mobility you have as a sniper has saved my ass far more times than attempting a close-range headshot has, especially when used in conjunction with your SMG or melee. If you want to make the most out of the benefits, you have to hardscope and you have to body shot, because there's just no benefit otherwise unless you get a collateral, and I really just don't like this. It's not just because I already don't like body shots, it's because it means this rifle really doesn't have much of an identity outside of extremely choke-heavy scenarios where you stand a chance of getting a collateral multi-kill. Also, as I mentioned a lot, I like being aggressive, so having basically no benefit to doing anything but hardscoping really puts a damper on things for me, and just makes me not like the weapon. The Machina's insistence on not just hardscoping, but hardscoping to full charge for every shot makes you so vulnerable to all your snipery weaknesses that I feel like the Razorback is a near necessity, because at least that takes care of one of them. But then that just makes it so you're able to defend yourself in close range situations far less than you already can, because now you don't have an SMG. Or even the Girardi Bushwhacker, which hey, I still fucking hate, but at least it's some means of reliably defending yourself. You basically have to either hit a random melee crit, or a close range quickscope. And honestly, the biggest value I can see in this weapon is using it to train yourself to hit those shots because it forces you to do so. In other words, the best value this weapon has is making gingers from Texas very upset as frequently as possible. How much value you find in that really depends on you as a person. It's a weapon that I feel greatly limits your playstyle instead of giving you more freedom. You get to play Sniper in exactly one way, and while it's in a way that he's already very powerful in, arguably the most powerful in, which is to say when the game has slowed down enough for you to get a solid hold and comfortably stay still long enough to get some charged shots in, it's not the way I like to play. And I think ultimately it makes for an uninspired design. This is the only sniper primary I don't have a strange or even a kill streak for. Not because it's expensive as shit, which don't get me wrong, it fucking is, but because I just don't like the gun. It's not a weapon fit for an episode of Bad Weapon Academy because the fully charged body shots can actually be quite powerful, and in fact this weapon is banned in all forms of competitive. This is because in 6v6, snipers are usually short-term picks during stalemates, so having to fully charge and having the tracer rounds aren't really downsides, since not only do many 6 snipers just kind of hang out in the spawn door waiting to get a pick before they change back to their main class, but many competitive players can tell when a player has gone sniper through just reading the fucking room somehow, and considering how stalematey 6s can get, it's basically a straight upgrade that might allow you to drop the medic with a body shot on their soldier. Not to mention the lack of spies and enemy snipers means that your counters aren't nearly as common in 6s, which just gives you even more freedom. And in Highlander, seeing as how Sniper is already one of the most important classes in that format, giving him the ability to one-shot 2 people at once is probably not something anyone wants to play against. The weapon is in this weird gray zone of being overpowered and yet also kind of totally pointless. I don't even know what the hell to make of it, but I certainly don't like it. Maybe you do, and that's okay, but I'd really like to see it change into something else a bit more unique. For one thing, I'd honestly just remove the extra damage. It's no help unless you're camping safely to get body shots, and that's a seriously lame playstyle on a class that basically nobody likes fighting to begin with. Again, I'd be more than happy with less overall damage for a faster charge, or just the ability to do collaterals regardless of my charge level, since that would make them feel way more practical to pull off. I'm not sure what else you could add to make it less samey than the other rifles without adding new stats to rifles like
the clip size and reload speed like we've implemented in the rebalance server and like I talked about in my sniper balance discussion video.
But honestly, it being samey isn't nearly as big of a sin as it being both boring and much more mindless to use than the other rifles. I know that the Classic's whole deal is also based around hard scoping, but god, I think that weapon's way more fun to use, and that's saying something. Exploded.
No one is immune to death of the author. That was not who I was aiming for.